Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go. So I'm hoping everybody had a good week last week. I talked a lot about how it was preparatory energy and a lot about taking stock and how we're poising ourselves for going ahead. We're leading up to that full moon lunar eclipse, the end of this week. And what I see happening this week is absolutely delicious. And I say that because as the days move, we are getting super support from the planetary energies on how we handle and basically deal with the emotional turmoil that many of us find ourselves in at this point in time. We are going through a very cataclysmic time here on the planet. There's a lot of change, turmoil, transition. Things are not the same, and they're not going to be the same. And in an evolutionary capacity, if we look at how the world has gone and humans and other life forms in it, we could use a major shift of awareness, of working together in a more collaborative, cohesive way. However, we are, in a way, victims of our own technology. There has been such an acceleration of what human beings have to grapple and deal with. If you think generations before, go back to thinking about parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, depending on your age, looking back, life, the enormous shift of life generationally has been exponential, because prior to the Industrial Revolution, basically the onset of the 20th century, life didn't really change that much for how people lived and what they did, unless they went through radical shifts of changing classes or doing some sort of exploration that really broke the mold of what lifestyle and things had been energetically for their ancestors. So what we're dealing with is not only cultural evolutions and revolutions, but in the end, spiritual evolution, consciousness evolution. How conscious are we, each of us, about how the world is evolving? And I could really go off on a tangent here about the messaging that pundits and governmental bodies have at this point in time. But instead of doing that, I'm going to focus on the energy of the week. It opens up with the moon in Sagittarius. The other thing that happens is that in the wee hours, the times I work with are Eastern time, so you need to modify depending on where you are. Saturn goes back retrograde into the sign of Pisces at 4:07 a.m. We have been in a little sprint of Saturn in Aries, and that is really going to continue to shift how basically structures reinvent themselves or move forward with what they want to change and make happen. With the Pisces, it may bring up some sort of reflection on how things are going and the acceleration of movement with what's happening. I think we'll see this especially with financial decisions and how, the roller coaster of tariffs and all that other stuff is going with funding, et cetera, certainly in the United States, but which affects basically the financial well-being and decisions of the rest of the world because it's such a large country. So that's happening depending on where you have Aries Pisces in your horoscope. You're going to take note of, what am I maybe remembering with as it dips back into Pisces with whatever my Saturn-in journey was the past 2.5, 3 years. And then it will go back to Aries. But for now, we're in this period where we are in reflection. And as I've talked about before, all these outer planets, Saturn's not considered quite an outer planet, but it's certainly a generational planet. So we're seeing these planets having shift into air and fire signs. And some of them will head back to where they were before, but basically energetically, we're in yang energy, air, fire. Decisions must be made, courses will shift, and it really requires perspective and courage as we proceed in the next couple of years. What may have happened for some of us is a sort of cycling in place, like, let's see how this is going to roll out. Maybe things will get better. Maybe it's not going to be as cataclysmic as I think it is. With this period of time, as I've talked about before, really tap into if you are experiencing sloths or moments of grief, because many of us are. Things are changing. And even though that can be exciting to some people, there's also grief that comes. Things are not the same. And many of us don't necessarily like the changes. So there's grief about what we realize we can't control, or perhaps we have to jump into doing things we'd really rather not, because, as I said, air and fire, it's about taking action and finding a well of courage. That is what is required of us as we go forward over the next few years. So overall, when this occurs, what else is happening is that the moon is in the sign of Sagittarius. So we will have this kind of, are we stepping up? Who are the people who really support whatever it is we're doing? It really behooves each of us to make clear evaluations about who we spend our time with and why. And today may be a day where that comes into crystal clarity. And you may look around and see, yeah, I've got my crew and my team. I'm in good shape. Or you may look around and think, oh, I really have to spend less time with so-and-so because they are a drain and not helping me move in the directions I really want to move. This isn't about bailing on people who depend on us, but it is about looking at people who perhaps say they're going to show up and help in some way, or they're there for you. And maybe that isn't the So the moon goes void, of course, at 9:39 p.m. the evening of Monday, and very quickly it moves into Capricorn, 9:45 p.m. Now we're in the real let's flow, let's move, let's build energy. And this just continues for the next few days as we head towards that eclipse end of the week. So that moon in Capricorn wants us to clear out the cobwebs, wants us to get a sense of alignment with what we're doing this week. If we started off kind of feeling like things weren't gelling or coming together, sit down, figure it out Monday evening, and aim for high productivity this week. Waxing moon cycle, heading towards that eclipse, so much can happen. Even if you're simply in your mind's eye, the absolute strength of movement is occurring. So that means that, well, let's say you're in a conceptualization mode or you're planning something. Things can't quite come into shape right yet. It's still a good time to be mapping that out, figuring out who you're going to call, what your goals, ambitions are. These things can totally start to take shape when you pull down, focus, and say to yourself, this is where I'm going. Let's say you're working a job that feels like a total drudge to you. Come home, do your whatever it is, meditation, think about classes you might take or places you might go that are different than your present environment, job search, whatever it is, but aim for a goal direction that's going to help you light up and really make happen. Even if, let's say, the job is very high paying and you're in a place where you're meeting your responsibilities, familial, etc., but you're not necessarily doing everything you feel called to do. Figure out how to craft time for that. Volunteer. This is a great week to really look into not necessarily pushing yourself till the well is dry. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about finding the flow that allows you to be more, to aim more, to feel a sense of fulfillment and purpose. So Tuesday the 2nd, really great day, continues to fuel us in that way. And when I say it's a really great day, we aren't necessarily partying, buzzing around, like doing a lot of like, wow, life is fabulous thing. We may be, but I do see that we can really feel a sense of satisfaction, like totally exhaust the chi that day because everything that has been happening is productive, fruitful, and you can hit the pillow into the night feeling like, yes, I accomplished something. I happen to move in ways that feel like I'm going the direction that I want. So Wednesday, the 3rd, another really good day. The things to mention are that in the morning, some of us might be cranky. Some people may just feel frustrated, especially the early morning. It's advisable not to engage with someone who kind of wants to start a fight or just feels nothing's working. Might be better to avoid or just nod heads or do whatever that can diffuse the situation. It will diffuse by the time we get to mid-morning. Things are much more in alignment with continuing with that nice productivity. It's valuable to, in the morning or the night before, map out your day so you know what you're doing when, and really, really useful not to overschedule or overdo. I mean, we can sort of stretch the envelope if energy and time allows, but that's not necessarily going to give you maximum return. What is enticing is that you may feel as though you have to spread everything really thin in order to touch all the places you want to go. It may be advisable if you've got a really packed agenda to look at it again, especially once we get past 9 a.m. again, Eastern time, and just sort of scan it and see what might go or be put on another day. Because what you really want to do is get a lot of power out of what you put in on this day. It's really fabulous day for growth, to, if you need to initiate anything, contact some big honcho or somebody who can really help you with something that you haven't been able to have a meeting with. That meeting might really extend, be a lot more productive than you had imagined, and therefore you don't want to have to pick yourself up and say, hey, I've got to go. I'm so sorry. I have another meeting. That really isn't the way to play it. It's better to analyze your schedule and figure out what allows me wiggle room if I need that. The next day, Thursday, also looks like the morning, especially the early morning for people who get up on the early side, might need to send out some mailings. But even if you don't do that, if actually the ideal is you wake up and you're in this space of meditation, reflection, intention, and really use that for powering out your day so that you can enter that day with a lot of punch and thoughts about how you're going to move it and flow with it. Terrific day. The moon goes void, of course, at 6:08 a.m. And then at 6:32 a.m., it enters the sign of Aquarius. This day is so strong for making those connections, networking, people you talk to. I mean, it could be side conversations on the street, in the park, in a lobby, things that you didn't really expect that you were going to connect and open into. This can be available to you, and it can really go places. If you do have meetings, if you are engaging with people that are valuable for a place where you're aiming for or something you have in mind to make happen, just incredibly rich conversations and a lot of ability for people to come together with action goals and real direction plans. Sometimes we have conversations that are great and there's a lot of things that we can imagine and it feels just so wonderful, but nothing really takes form. There's no real substance where things are written down, put on the calendar, phone calls are made, action plans created. This day into Friday, really strong days for that kind of crafting, creating, and collaboration. Super, super energy for that. If you're just working alone on a project of your own making, it can also be highly productive in the sense of you know what to say or do. It's almost like listening to your audience and speaking to them. So we can really get a lot of enrichment on these days from that imagining or intention of who the audience is. Who are we reaching and speaking to? Because historically I'm an artist. I'm always sort of doing something, creating something. I also write. And I know some artists work in a vacuum and they're simply interested in their own process and what they're creating. But in the end, whatever we're doing is about making a connection. It may feel like it's enough just to produce something, but we want to make some connection, to have it recognized or seen in some way, a reaction from the other. Even in many cases, this is an actual sacred tradition where the artist is in dialogue with God or whatever that spiritual being is that they are moved to connect with. It's an expression that is communication. And so these 2 days are longing for that igniting with a response, with someone who gets, receives, even if they don't, necessarily like it or understand it. But that is that creative spark energy that is running through these couple of days with flow, momentum, and the energy that's going towards that lunar eclipse at the end of the week. So the moon goes forward, of course, at 1:51 p.m. on Friday the 5th, after which the moon is void the rest of the day and into Saturday at 12:51 a.m., Uranus goes retrograde. Uranus now is in the sign of Pisces, early degrees, and it is going retrograde. As I said at the beginning of the week, we had Saturn going retrograde. Now, at this point on Saturday, just in the early hours, Uranus goes retrograde. So this is also kind of pulling into a remembrance energy of when it had been in the sign of Taurus, even though right now it's in Gemini, but it will be retrograding back. Right. So on Saturday, the 6th, the moon enters Pisces at 11:54 a.m. And this makes the weekend a beautiful one for anything therapeutic, meditative, prayer, creative, music. Oh, very ramped up for music. Things that bring in color, light, sensation. But it could also be just hanging at the beach or by a lake, floating somewhere that we want to be restored. But even though we want to be restored, and I think it gets really, really sweet after mid-afternoon on Saturday, because before that, we may feel very jazzed up, like we want to do stuff. Like it's almost about expelling excess energy for some of us, especially air and fire signs. We may feel very jazzed, very kind of, I got to do this, I've got to go here, I've got to make that happen. But that passes after mid-afternoon. And then we're in this kind of luscious period of simply wanting to watch the light on trees, see the flowers sway, delight in hummingbirds, dance, hang out with people who are drinking some lovely Jamaica tea or something, just doing things that feel sweet and restorative. The added spark to this weekend, especially on Sunday, is if that restorative energy enables us to really sink into whatever the next commitment, project, ideal is. Now, as I wrap up, I'm going to talk about that lunar eclipse, full moon. And that happens on Sunday the 7th. It's exact at 2:09 p.m. And this lunar eclipse is bringing in a lot of structure. It's asking that, okay, you take your creative vision, whatever it may be, or your highest hopes of spiritual fulfillment, or wishes of how the world can be a better place, or how you can be a healing energy for the world, whether that's through art, through your work, through community groups, through heightened relationships with your friends and family. But where is the connectivity? And this full moon really asks us to see what each of us can apply to make that desire, concept, loving wish concrete. What can make it real? Is there something that can be done? And I'm not talking about trying to fix somebody, because that's kind of always a dead end. But what can be done to help the connectivity? It can be very subtle, and I work on this particular project. It's not easy, but there are, let's not to get too specific, but there are, let's say, world leaders or people with a lot of power who basically, in my perception, lack love. They are not people who are in touch with loving energy and compassion. And it may well be because they have experienced a lack of that themselves. Not that I'm thinking, oh, the poor person who has so much power, but I am thinking at times, how can I meditate and think in terms of what helps to soften that person who is so extreme, rigid, and power hungry? What energy can come in to soften the rigidity? And yes, some of you may be thinking, just topple the power hungry person. Well, that's a methodology. But I'm talking about what each of us can do in some capacity that is a project that opens up to more potential for loving energy. Perhaps you can plant a tree in your neighborhood or do something that's speaking about, I am doing something concrete to recognize that I want to lovingly collaborate, to raise the vibration, to create something that's loving and perhaps beautiful, to lift the spirit. What can I do? And it could just be a reflection on what can I do? And what'll happen is the opportunity to do will follow the meditation, intention, expectation of what can I do?
You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.